Have you ever wondered how someone who lost everything could one day govern an empire? Imagine being at the bottom of a dark pit, thrown there by people who should have loved you. And then, when things finally seem to get a little better, you're falsely accused and thrown into a cold, forgotten prison. How could anyone endure such betrayals and still maintain hope? This is the incredible journey of Joseph, a young dreamer who faced envy, betrayal, and abandonment, but never lost his integrity. What would you do if the people who hurt you the most came one day begging for your help? Keep watching to discover how a simple boy from a family of shepherds became one of the most powerful men in the ancient world. In a land of deserts and little rainfall lived an elderly man named Jacob with his 12 sons. Among them all, Joseph was the favorite. He was only 17 years old and was different from the others. While his older brothers spent their days in the fields tending to the family's flocks, Joseph stayed closer to his father. Jacob made no secret of his preference for his son. He even had a special garment made for Joseph, colorful and beautiful, unlike the simple clothes everyone wore in those days. Imagine how the other brothers felt watching this scene every day. With each smile their father gave Joseph, jealousy grew in the hearts of the other sons. To make matters worse, Joseph had dreams, not ordinary dreams, but dreams that seemed like special messages. One morning he woke up excited and went to tell his brothers, "Listen, I dreamed we were all in the field binding sheaves of wheat. Suddenly my sheaf stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers looked at him angrily. "Do you think you will rule over us? Do you think you'll be our king?" Their anger only increased when, days later, Joseph told another dream. "The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me." Even his father rebuked him this time. "What are you suggesting? That your mother, your brothers, and I will bow down to the ground before you?" Even so, Jacob kept these words in his heart, pondering what they might mean. One day, Joseph's brothers were tending the flocks far from home. Jacob called Joseph and asked, "Go see how your brothers are doing and bring me news of them." Joseph had no idea that journey would change his life forever. When his brothers saw Joseph approaching in the distance, with his colorful robe shining under the sun, they began to whisper among themselves, "Look, here comes the dreamer. This is our chance." Their hearts were full of jealousy and bitterness. "Let's kill him and throw his body into one of the dry wells. We'll say a wild animal devoured him, then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben, the oldest brother, didn't want Joseph to be killed. "Don't take his life," he suggested. "Throw him alive into that dry well, but don't shed blood." Deep down, Reuben was planning to come back later and rescue Joseph. When Joseph arrived, his brothers seized him, tore off his beautiful colored robe, and threw him into a dry well. The young dreamer screamed and begged, but his brothers sat down to eat, ignoring his pleas for help. While they were eating, they saw a caravan of merchants approaching, heading to a distant land called Egypt. That's when Judah, another brother, had an idea. "What profit will we have if we kill our brother? Let's sell him to these merchants." And so they did. For 20 pieces of silver, the price of a young slave at that time, they sold their own brother. Imagine the scene: Joseph being dragged away, tied to a rope along with other slaves, looking back and seeing his own brothers counting the coins they received for him. To hide their crime, the brothers took Joseph's colorful robe, stained it with goat's blood, and brought it to their father. "We found this. See if it is your son's robe." Jacob immediately recognized it. "It is Joseph's robe. A wild animal must have torn him to pieces." The father tore his own clothes as a sign of deep mourning and wept for his son for many days, refusing to be comforted. Meanwhile, the caravan headed toward Egypt, a land of imposing pyramids and a great river that overflowed every year, bringing life to the crops. Joseph, now a slave, looked at the horizon, leaving behind everything he knew. Keep watching to discover how this betrayed young man would face a life of slavery in a strange land, with different customs and a language he didn't understand. Arriving in Egypt, Joseph was sold as a slave to Potiphar, an important officer who worked for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was commander of the guard, something like a security chief in today's terms. In his large and luxurious house, Joseph started working on the simplest and hardest tasks. But there was something different about Joseph. Even as a slave, he worked with dedication and intelligence. He didn't complain about his tasks, no matter how hard they were. Potiphar noticed this quickly. This young foreigner is trustworthy and competent, he thought as he watched Joseph solve problems that other slaves couldn't. Over time, Potiphar began giving Joseph more responsibilities. From a simple servant, he became the administrator of the entire house. Before long, Joseph was managing everything that belonged to his master, the accounts, the other servants, the properties. Potiphar trusted Joseph so much that he no longer worried about checking how his affairs were going. Joseph's life seemed to be improving. He had a good place to live, food on the table, and a respected job, even though he was a slave. But a new problem was about to arise, even bigger than the previous one. Potiphar's wife began to notice that young foreigner who managed the house. Day after day, she observed Joseph. He was handsome, intelligent, and had a different way of dealing with people. The woman approached him frequently, always finding excuses to be near him, until one day, when there was no one else in the house, Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph. "Come, lie with me," she insisted, grabbing his garment. Joseph knew that was wrong. It would be a betrayal of Potiphar, who trusted him so much. "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against the trust your husband placed in me?" he replied, trying to get out of that situation. The woman didn't give up. Every day she pressured him, but Joseph always refused. One afternoon, when Joseph was working alone in the house, she grabbed his garment forcefully. "Lie with me," she demanded. Joseph pulled away and fled, leaving his garment in her hands, humiliated and furious at being rejected. Potiphar's wife screamed for help. When the other servants came, she showed Joseph's garment and lied. "Look, that Hebrew slave tried to attack me. When I screamed, he ran away, leaving his garment behind." When Potiphar came home and heard his wife's story, he was furious. Without giving Joseph a chance to defend himself, he had him imprisoned immediately. In the blink of an eye, Joseph went from respected administrator to prisoner, thrown into a cold, dark prison where the king's prisoners were kept. Once again, everything was taken from him, first his brothers, now a vindictive woman. Joseph could have given in to despair and bitterness. Instead, he maintained his integrity and continued to be who he was, even in the worst circumstances. In prison, just as in Potiphar's house, Joseph soon stood out. The jailer noticed that he was different from the other prisoners. He was honest, hard-working, and helped maintain order. Over time, the jailer began to trust Joseph and gave him responsibilities. Soon Joseph was managing the prison, taking care of the other prisoners. Among the new prisoners who arrived were two important servants from Pharaoh's palace: the chief cupbearer, responsible for serving the king's wine, and the chief baker, who prepared the royal bread. Both had displeased Pharaoh in some way. Joseph was put in charge of them. One morning, Joseph noticed that the two men looked troubled. "Why do you look so sad today?" he asked. They answered, "We both had dreams last night, and there is no one here who can tell us what they mean." Joseph remembered his own dreams, those that had so irritated his brothers years before. "Tell me your dreams," he said. "Keep watching to discover how these dreams would become the key that would open the prison doors for Joseph, leading him to a destiny no one could have imagined." The cupbearer was the first to tell his dream. "In my dream, I saw a vine with 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and produced ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's cup. I took the grapes, squeezed them into the cup, and placed it in Pharaoh's hand." Joseph listened carefully and answered, "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do." Then Joseph added, "When all goes well with you, please remember me. Mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and I have done nothing to deserve being put in this dungeon." Encouraged by the interpretation, the baker also told his dream. I had 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them from the basket on my head. Joseph's expression changed. With a grave voice he said, "The 3 baskets are also 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole. The birds will eat your flesh." 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday. He gave a great feast for all his officials. During the celebrations, Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to his position in the palace, exactly as Joseph had predicted. But the chief baker was executed, also as Joseph had said. The cupbearer, now back in his privileged job at the palace, completely forgot about Joseph. 2 whole years passed, and Joseph remained in prison, seemingly forgotten by everyone. Then, one night, Pharaoh himself had 2 troubling dreams. In the first, he was standing by the Nile River when 7 fat, sleek cows came up out of the river and began to graze on the riverbank. Soon after, 7 ugly, gaunt cows came up from the river and devoured the 7 fat cows. Even after eating the fat cows, the thin cows looked just as gaunt as before. In the second dream, Pharaoh saw 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. Pharaoh woke up disturbed. The next morning, he summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt to interpret his dreams, but no one could explain the meaning. It was then that the chief cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings," he said to Pharaoh. "When you were angry with your servants and put the chief baker and me in custody, we each had a dream the same night. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us." Immediately, Pharaoh sent for Joseph from prison. After shaving and changing out of his prison clothes, Joseph was brought before the most powerful ruler of the known world. Imagine the scene: a former slave and prisoner, now before the throne of Egypt, surrounded by royal guards and advisors. "I heard that you can interpret dreams," said Pharaoh. Joseph, with humility, replied, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Pharaoh told his dreams, and Joseph listened carefully. Then with confidence he explained, "The 2 dreams are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years of great abundance throughout Egypt. The 7 lean, ugly cows and the 7 worthless heads of grain are 7 years of famine that will follow, so severe that all the abundance will be forgotten." The fact that the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms means that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. Joseph didn't stop at the interpretation. He also offered a plan: let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners to collect 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 years of abundance. This food should be stored in the cities, under Pharaoh's authority, as a reserve for the 7 years of famine. Then the country will not be ruined by the famine. The plan pleased Pharaoh so much that he made a surprising decision. Keep watching to see how a simple foreign prisoner would become the 2nd most powerful man in all of Egypt. Pharaoh looked at his advisors, and then at Joseph. "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" he asked. Then turning to Joseph, he declared, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people will submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh took his signet ring, a symbol of authority, and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothes, and put a gold chain around his neck. He gave him the 2nd most important chariot in the kingdom to ride in, and ordered people to bow down when he passed by. "I am Pharaoh," said the king, "but without your word no one will lift hand or foot in all Egypt." Pharaoh also gave Joseph a new name, Zaphanath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, daughter of an important priest, as his wife. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered Pharaoh's service. The young man who was thrown into a well by his brothers, sold as a slave, and unjustly imprisoned was now the governor of all Egypt. Only Pharaoh had more power than he did. Exactly as Joseph predicted, 7 years of abundant harvests came. The land produced so much that it seemed impossible to count. During this time, Joseph traveled throughout the country, supervising the construction of large storehouses in each city. 1/5 of all the harvest was stored as a reserve for the future. The amount of grain stored was so great that they stopped measuring it. It was like the sand of the sea. During these years of prosperity, Asenath gave Joseph 2 sons. He named the firstborn Manasseh, saying, "God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." The second he named Ephraim, saying, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." When the 7 years of abundance ended, the 7 years of famine began, exactly as Joseph had predicted. The famine spread throughout all the countries in the region, but in Egypt there was food stored in every city. When the Egyptian people began to feel the famine, they cried out to Pharaoh for food. "Go to Joseph," Pharaoh replied, "and do what he tells you." The famine was so severe that people from all the neighboring countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph. In a distant land of shepherds, the same family of sheep breeders from which Joseph had come years ago, also began to suffer from the food shortage. Jacob, now a very old man, heard that there was grain in Egypt. He called his sons and said, "Why do you just keep looking at each other? I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain. Jacob did not allow Benjamin, the youngest son and Joseph's only full brother, to go with them. "I am afraid that harm might come to him," the protective father explained. The 10 brothers arrived in Egypt along with many other people who were also seeking food. Since Joseph was the governor of the country and responsible for selling grain, everyone who came to buy had to present themselves to him. Joseph's brothers approached and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them. However, they did not recognize him. The young man they had sold as a slave was now a 39-year-old man, dressed as an Egyptian nobleman, speaking another language, and occupying a position of great power. Besides, more than 20 years had passed since they had last seen him. Joseph immediately remembered the dreams he had as a young man, those that had so irritated his brothers, their sheaves of wheat bowing down to his, the sun, moon and 11 stars bowing down to him. Now his brothers were literally bowing before him, exactly as in his dreams. But instead of immediately revealing who he was, Joseph decided to test his brothers. He spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" "From the land of Canaan," they answered, "to buy food." "You are spies," Joseph accused. "You have come to see where our land is unprotected." Terrified, the brothers protested, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." "No," Joseph insisted. "You have come to see where our land is unprotected." They explained, "Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man, who lives in Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Joseph continued with his test. "It is just as I told you, you are spies. And this is how I will test you. By Pharaoh's life, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brother, the rest of you will be kept in prison. In this way your words will be tested to see if you are telling the truth." He put them all in custody for 3 days. On the 3rd day he said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving households. But bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and that you may not die." What would Joseph do with his brothers? Would he seek revenge for what they did to him, or was there a greater plan behind his actions?
Keep watching to discover the surprising outcome of this ancient story that still has much to teach us about forgiveness and reconciliation. The brothers, not knowing that Joseph understood their language, began to speak among themselves, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come on us." Reuben, the oldest, replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." Hearing this, Joseph turned away and wept. His brothers were truly remorseful for what they had done. After composing himself, he returned and ordered that Simeon, the second oldest, be bound before their eyes and kept as a hostage. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. Without them knowing it, he was taking care of them, even while testing them.
On the way back, one of the brothers opened his sack to get feed for his donkey and discovered his silver in the mouth of the sack. "My silver has been returned," he exclaimed. "Here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank. Trembling, they asked one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they arrived home, they told Jacob everything that had happened, including about Simeon, who was detained, and about the demand to bring Benjamin. As they emptied their sacks, each one found his bag of silver. Both they and their father were afraid. Jacob lamented, "You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me." He refused to let Benjamin go. "My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow." But the famine was severe in the land. When they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Go back and buy us a little more food." Judah reminded him, "The man warned us solemnly, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" Finally, after much discussion, Jacob agreed to let Benjamin go, but not without expressing his fear and sadness. "If I am bereaved, I am bereaved," he said resignedly. The brothers took gifts, double the amount of silver to return what was found in their sacks, and Benjamin. When they arrived in Egypt, they were taken to Joseph's house. Seeing Benjamin with them, Joseph told the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." The brothers were afraid. "We were brought here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time," they thought. "He wants to attack us, overpower us, seize us as slaves and take our donkeys." They explained to the steward about the silver found in their sacks, but he replied, "It's all right, don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver." Then he brought Simeon out to them. When Joseph arrived, they presented him with the gifts and bowed down to the ground before him. He asked about their welfare, and then said, "Is your elderly father you told me about still living?" "Your servant our father is still alive and well," they replied, bowing down again. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, Joseph asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" Then he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room, and there he wept. After washing his face, he came back and, controlling himself, ordered serve the food. Joseph ate separately from his brothers, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews. That was detestable to them. The brothers were seated in order, from the firstborn to the youngest, which amazed them, and Joseph sent portions to them from his table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. After the meal, Joseph gave secret instructions to his house steward. "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain." At dawn, when the brothers departed, Joseph sent his steward after them to accuse them of stealing his special cup. When the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, the brothers tore their clothes in despair and returned to the city. Back at Joseph's house, Judah spoke for the group. "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup." Joseph replied, "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you may go back to your father in peace." Then Judah approached Joseph and made a passionate plea, explaining how his father loved Benjamin and would be devastated if the young man didn't return. "Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father." At that moment, Joseph could no longer control himself. "Have everyone leave my presence," he cried out. Left alone with his brothers, Joseph began to weep so loudly that the Egyptians outside heard him, and word of it reached Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still living?" His brothers were so stunned that they could not answer. Joseph said, "Come close to me." When they came close, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. But now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me like a father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father, and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute.'" Joseph then threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. He kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Only then were his brothers able to talk with him, still astounded by the revelation. The news reached Pharaoh's palace. "Joseph's brothers have come." Pharaoh and his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, load your animals and return to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your families here. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat from the abundance of this land." Joseph gave his brothers carts, according to Pharaoh's orders, and also provisions for the journey. To each one he gave new clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of clothes. To his father he sent 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread and other provisions for the journey. When his brothers were leaving, Joseph told them, "Don't argue on the way." They left Egypt and arrived in the land of Canaan, where their father Jacob was. "Joseph is still alive," they told him. "In fact, he is governor of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned and did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph had said, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of the elderly Jacob revived. "Enough," said Israel. "My son Joseph is still alive. I will go see him before I die." So Israel set out with all that he had. When he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in a night vision. "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he replied. "I am God, the God of your father," he said. "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back. Joseph's hands will close your eyes." Then Jacob left Beersheba. The sons of Israel took their father Jacob, their young children, and their wives in the carts that Pharaoh had sent to transport them. When they arrived in Egypt, Joseph prepared his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as he saw him, he threw himself on his neck and wept for a long time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now I can die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." Joseph presented 5 of his brothers to Pharaoh, who asked them, "What is your occupation?" "Your servants are shepherds as our fathers were," they replied. "We have come to live here for a while, because the famine is severe in Canaan, and there is no pasture for your servants' flocks. Now please allow your servants to settle in Goshen." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is at your disposal. Settle your father and brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen." Joseph also presented his father Jacob to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh asked Jacob, "How old are you?" "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. Jacob replied, "Few and difficult have been the years of my life, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and left his presence. So Joseph settled his father and brothers and gave them property in the best part of Egypt, the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had ordered. He also provided food for his father, his brothers and his father's entire household, according to the number of their children. There was no food anywhere, because the famine was very severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was in Egypt and Canaan, received for the grain they were selling, and deposited it in Pharaoh's palace. When the money of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? Our money is gone." "Then bring your livestock," Joseph said. "I will give you food in exchange for your livestock, since the money is gone." When that year ended, they came to him the following year and said, "We cannot hide from our Lord that since our money is gone, and our livestock belongs to you, nothing is left for our Lord except our bodies and our lands. Why should we perish before your eyes? We and our land too. Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we and our land will be servants to Pharaoh." So Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh. The Egyptians, one by one, sold their fields, because the famine was too severe for them. The land became Pharaoh's property, and Joseph reduced the people to servitude, from one end of Egypt to the other. Joseph established a decree that remains to this day concerning the land in Egypt. 1/5 belongs to Pharaoh. Only the priest's land did not become Pharaoh's property. The Israelites settled in Egypt, in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there, were fruitful, and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. When the time approached for Israel to die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If I have found favor in your eyes, promise me that you will not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, take me out of Egypt, and bury me where they are buried. I will do as you say." Joseph promised. Before he died, Jacob blessed Joseph's 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, as well as each of his own sons, pronouncing a specific blessing on each one. Jacob gathered his sons and said, "Gather around so I can tell you what will happen in days to come." After blessing his sons, Jacob said, "I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite." This was the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre in Canaan, which Abraham had bought as a burial site. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and there I buried Leah. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph threw himself upon his father, wept over him and kissed him. He ordered the physicians who served him to embalm his father Israel. This took the full 40 days, for that was the time required for embalming, and the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph went to Pharaoh's court officials. "If I have found favor in your eyes," he said, "take this message to Pharaoh. My father made me swear an oath and said, 'I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I prepared for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father. Then I will return.'" Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do." So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials, the members of his court, and all the dignitaries of Egypt went with him, as well as all of Joseph's household, his brothers and his father's household. It was a very large group. After burying his father,
Joseph and his brothers returned to Egypt. Now that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers were afraid and said to one another, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrong we did to him?" They sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers' transgression and their sin, for they did you wrong. Now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father." When this message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph lived until the age of 110 years. He saw the third generation of Ephraim's children, and the children of Machir, Manasseh's son, were placed on his knees at birth. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid, and take you up out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob." And Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath, saying, "God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place." So Joseph died at the age of 110 years. He was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. What began with a boy thrown into a well, ended with a man who saved nations. Joseph's story teaches us that the path of our lives rarely follows a straight line. Sometimes the most painful moments are precisely those that prepare us for our greatest purpose. At the beginning of this story, we asked what you would do if the people who hurt you the most one day came begging for your help. Joseph shows us that true power lies not in revenge, but in forgiveness. He had in his hands the opportunity to punish his brothers, to make them suffer as he had suffered. Instead, he chose reconciliation. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." This simple phrase contains one of life's most profound lessons. Sometimes it is precisely our greatest wounds that transform into our greatest strength. It is our most difficult moments that shape who we become. Joseph not only survived betrayal, slavery and imprisonment, he grew through these experiences. Each challenge prepared him for what would come next. His experience as a slave in Potiphar's house taught him how to manage a household. His time in prison taught him to lead in difficult circumstances. All of this prepared him to save Egypt and his own family from devastating famine. This ancient story still resonates today because it speaks of deeply human experiences: jealousy between siblings, the pain of rejection, temptation, injustice, the ability to overcome adversity, and above all, the transformative power of forgiveness. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to learn more ancient stories that still have much to teach us today. Next time, we will discover how a man raised as a prince in the palace became the leader who freed his people from slavery. Until then,